During your travels around the internet, you may have bumped into the term toxic masculinity.
Actually, I'd prefer to say it's been hurled at me with great speed.
It usually shows up in connection with particularly abusive male behavior, so things like harassment, homophobia, sexism, or violent outbursts.
None of those are male behaviours. Homophobia is a male behaviour. Tell that to Shirley Phelps Roper, why don't you?
The streets of this nation are full of married men having fag sex.
And what's male about harassment, for heaven's sake? I mean, this is what happens when someone who knows nothing about men or women attempts to explain men and women. Toxic bullshit.
But what does it really mean?
Nothing. You just made it up. Detective agency. Yeah, Detective John McIntosh, 221B Pratt Street.
Now, since there tends to be so much confusion and defensiveness surrounding these two words, I think we might need to start off with a really clear example. Something that we can all agree on.
Ugh,
Okay,
your dislike of Donald Trump
But
simply
honestly,
encourages
I think he
people
needs
to
his own
vote for him.
video, so maybe something else we...
What do you think you're doing?
Okay, that's gonna work.
No, that's not going to work.
Biff from the Back to the Future series.
Yeah, we know. That's a fictional character, mate.
Hello? Hello? Anybody home?
Hello? Hello? Anybody home? Huh? Think, McFly, think!
Okay, forget it. I mean, if this is the game we're playing nowadays, well, there are two sides to the chessboard, my friends, and I've just thought of a way of making this video a little more interesting.
During your travels around the internet,
You may have bumped into the term toxic femininity. It usually shows up in connection with particularly abusive female behaviours, so things like stalking, selfishness, duplicity, or violent outbursts.
but what does it really mean? Well, let's find out. Now, since there tends to be so much confusion and defensiveness surrounding these two words, I think we might need to start off with a really clear example. Something that we can all agree on. Okay, yeah. But honestly, I think he needs his own video, so maybe something else we...
So you can go shave your back now.
Okay, that's gonna work.
This charming lady is Regina George from Mean Girls.
You're like really pretty.
Thank you.
So you agree?
What?
You think you're really pretty?
Oh, I don't know.
Do you know what everyone says about you? They say that you're a homeschooled jungle freak who's a less hot version of me.
Boo, you whore.
Okay, so let's start with the word femininity itself. Very broadly speaking, femininity is a set of behaviours and practices that have traditionally been associated with women or womanhood in our culture.
And that includes both positive and negative things.
Toxic femininity, on the other hand,
is a loose term that's used to refer to a subset of those behaviors which are harmful or destructive. It's often used as a sort of shorthand to describe behaviors linked to domination, humiliation, and control. It's marked by things like emotional detachment and hypercompetitiveness.
Oh my god. I love your skirt. Where did you get it?
It was my mom's in the 80s.
Vintage. So adorable.
Thanks.
That is the ugliest effing skirt I've ever seen.
it's also connected to the sexual objectification of men,
as well as other predatory sexual behaviors.
Jingle bell, jingle bell, jingle bell rock. Jingle bells swing and jingle bells ring. Snowing and blowing up bushels of fun. Now the jingle hop has begun.
It's also linked very closely with aggression, manipulation, and deceit.
Shut up. I need to talk to you. You know that girl Katie?
Yeah, she's cool. I invited her tonight.
Well, be careful because she has a huge crush on you.
Really?
And okay, look, I'm not saying she's a stalker, but she saved this Kleenex you used, and she said she's gonna do some kind of African voodoo with it to make you like her.
What?
could Janice hate Regina? She was such a good slut!
The modifier toxic is used to highlight the fact that these kinds of behaviors carry with them some potentially dangerous and even deadly consequences.
Why do you wear your hair like that? Your hair looks so sexy, pushed back. Katie, will you please tell him his hair looks sexy, pushed back?
Much of this type of femininity is relational, and as such, it is mostly defined in opposition to anything culturally associated with men, which is why toxic femininity is driven by this overwhelming fear of defeminization. That is to say, the fear of being perceived by others as masculine and therefore unwomanly. Many of the most popular female heroes in movies are depicted as engaging in at least a few of these toxic behaviors.
Work your magic.
It's hot out there. Oh. It's hot in here too.
But because they're the good guys, their actions are framed as admirable displays of strength, power, and womanhood.
Do you like fast cars?
I like fast everything.
Oh my God.
Thanks for the ride.
Well, look, I think I should be going.
Sit down, Benjamin.
Mrs. Robinson, if you don't mind my saying so, this conversation is getting a little strange. Now, I'm sure that Mr. Robinson will be here any minute now.
No.
What?
My husband will be back quite late. He should be gone for several hours.
Oh, my God.
Pardon?
Oh, no, Mrs. Robinson, oh, no.
What's wrong?
Mrs. Robinson, you didn't expect...
What?
I mean, you didn't really think I'd do something like that.
Like what?
What do you think?
Well, I don't know.
For God's sake, Mrs. Robinson. Here we are. You got me into your house. You give me a drink. You put on music. Now you start opening up your personal life to me and tell me your husband won't be home for hours.
So?
Mrs. Robinson, you're trying to seduce me. Aren't you?
Just to make sure there's no misunderstanding, I want to make something absolutely clear.
This term is not a condemnation of women or womanhood, because again, toxic femininity
only refers to a particular set of harmful actions and cultural practices.
And none of those behaviors are inherent or biological traits of women. There's nothing toxic about just being a woman, but some women do act in toxic ways. So in other words, toxic femininity is not something that women are, rather it's something that some women do. Alright, so let's return to our friend Regina here. Now Regina is an obvious bitch. I mean, she's a schoolyard bully, she's like a cartoon villain. Her actions are easy to spot and understand as damaging, because really, toxic femininity is what defines her as a character.
Gretchen, stop trying to make fetch happen. It's not going to happen.
At every point in Mean Girls, there might as well be a giant neon sign hanging over Regina's head that says, hey, this is the bad guy.
So that's really easy. But things are rarely so clear-cut.
In the real world, all kinds of women can participate in toxic femininity, including seemingly normal girls,
who might also be nerdy or charming or witty or intelligent.
Since toxic femininity is a set of behaviors and not a biological trait, the real women who participate are not really one-dimensional character archetypes like Regina.
And they usually don't do all of the things on the list. Okay, well, sometimes they do, but usually that's not the case.
There's a mistaken impression out there that toxic femininity means that everything about femininity is somehow toxic. But that is not the case. In fact, the term toxic femininity is used very deliberately to try to differentiate the more damaging or destructive female behaviors from more positive female behaviors.
When it comes to this term, it's really important to understand that it's used to reinforce the fact that there are many different types
and formulations of femininity, or as S. Brownmiller puts it, different femininities. And since there are many ways to practice femininity, you as women can choose not to engage in the more toxic behaviors, and instead choose to pursue more positive, empathetic, and cooperative forms of femininity.
Now, we only just scratched the surface here.
Now, John, don't be so bloody modest. We nailed that and you know it. Come on, I mean, I don't think... You don't need to know any more than that. Job done. Consider yourselves educated, people. Now, can I have 160 grand, please?
It's not going to happen.
No, didn't think so.